Right then, good evening all, or good morning, or good afternoon, or wherever you are in the world. Hello and welcome to this, the second race in our Racing Pals Endurance Summer Cup 2024. This time brought to you from the virtual world of Suzuka, the classic, probably the most famous racetrack to come out of Japan, other than maybe Fuji, but certainly in recent years it has exceeded that track in terms of popularity and fame. This race will be 120 minutes, that is, as you may be aware, 2 hours of what looks to be some quite wet running around the Suzuka circuit. And we shall see what of these drivers coming to the end of their free practice session will take home victory at the end of the day and take that victory forwards to the next round in 2 weeks' time, which will be at Bathurst. Now, as we see, Robin Moe currently sitting P3. Now, if you joined us last time, you might remember them. Had their Silverstone cut through the course. They had an issue, I believe it was. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a wheel disconnect on the formation lap, which caused Robin Moe to have to reset his equipment and leave the server, which led to them having to do a pit lane start. From that pit lane start, they ended up, I think it was, P4 in the end, a climb of about, I think 20, not 20, sorry, yeah, no, it would have been about 20 odd cars. There were 22 cars. We currently have 14 marked in this practice session. Maybe we'll get a few more. Some I know aren't able to make this race. Others, I think, more recently were not confident in their abilities in the wet conditions. But certainly these top 3, I know, will give us a fantastic race today. So looking at our top 3, we have our returning Race 1 winner, Martin Kovac, in the Castrol Racing Honda NSX. A dominant performance last time out, marked a little bit by a few struggles towards the end of a stint on Silverstone. Some issues with tyres causing a little bit of time loss. It allowed Thomas Jack to work a 20-second gap down to a 10-second, but was still more than enough to take home the win at the end of the day for the Hungarian driver. Thomas Jack then, as we said, struggled to take that second, well, didn't struggle, sorry, to take that second, he got that second quite comfortably. Struggled though to try and get up to first. Now earlier today, I happen to know that he has been very complimentary of the Ford Mustang GT3 in these wet conditions at this track, which came to a surprise to some who perhaps are not as enjoying of it in the wet. The car can be a fickle thing. but he has certainly said he has been enjoying these conditions and currently sits only 4/10 off of Kovac's best time in this practice session. I don't know when that was set. I'm not entirely sure on how long this practice session has been wet for, but it's been increasing in weather, or will be increasing weather at the moment. And we shall have to see what their qualifying will be like, and what perhaps even the qualifying will be in terms of rain or no rain. I said Victor Borlin and Robin Moe make up the Optimum Motorsports teams, the first driver to be, or the first on the timing tower at the moment to be a duo team. I think whilst we have 14 drivers here, I think we have nearer 20 to 22 actual drivers. Sorry, I mean cars. We have about 14 cars and 20 odd, more than 20 drivers. Robin Moe and Victor Borlin share this Optimum Motorsport McLaren. Last week out, they were in a different base game livery that I didn't realise was a base game livery, but looked fantastic nonetheless. And this week they have selected the correct car, and they orange and, well, the papaya, I think it is, and the light blue classic McLaren or new McLaren racing colours on this car, and they will certainly be hoping, as I said earlier, to repeat. Well, they probably aren't hoping to repeat the climb through the field. They're probably hoping not to need to do it in the first place, but they are hoping to repeat their pace and advantage they had over a lot of the field in this race today. Ramon Willendorf, and Dennis Henning then make up the 4th place Porsche 232. And I believe Pascal Tanner and Anton Inhoffner are the second of the same team, the Glorious Racing Cars, with the Porsche 323. Now I am noticing some of these have different liveries to what they had last time out. It might be there was some issue on the back end. I certainly still have the liveries installed from last race, but that would be a shame if they don't have their proper livery. Unfortunately, it's a bit late now to go and change it as we swap over to the race session, or the qualifying session. 20 minutes of qualifying then. You see Thomas Jack and Martin Kovac very eager to get out into these conditions. Let's have a quick run down the order, who have I not looked at yet. Todd Curtis, another returning driver, fender bender Porsche. He had some interesting moments last race, certainly was involved in a couple of 3- and 4-way fights around the twists and turns of the Silverstone circuit. He is also a solo driver in the 90 Porsche. Tino Gunkel and Ralph Kettern then in the BHR Ferrari 979. A very nice looking livery that as well. I believe it's a base game edit, but it's very nice nonetheless. The 70 Ferrari. And again, two returning drivers that have been seen here before. Justin Gottlieb then, unable to make it last time around. A Vassar Sullivan Lexus, as of course it is, because it's Gottlieb. He drives nothing else. But it is a new livery. He usually drives the other livery, which name escapes me, the one with the honeycomb yellow-black texture. A different livery this time around, but the 36 Lexus once again returns with Justin Gottlieb at the helm. Michael Steinbeck then and Morten Christian Angstman, two another returning drivers of Mark Racing. Another team that we have seen a number of times at Racing Pals, and another team that puts on a good show. The only Aston Martin in the field at the moment. And again, last week they certainly had their share of fights and battles up and down the grid. So just checking the mini-map, the 80 car. That is Dave Petzold and Thorsten Wenning coming up to Degner 1. And then, sorry, Degner 2 and under the bridge up to the hairpin. Another couple of returning drivers, Dave Petzold teaming up with Thorsten Wenning in the 80 Porsche. And we've already mentioned Willendorf and Hennis Henning. Yaroslav Katsi then. I don't think I saw them. I don't think they were here last time out. If they were, I apologise. I cannot remember their name. But they are driving the only BMW of the session, which is a surprise. Someone that has been enjoying and enduring at times Assetto Corsa Competizione for many years. Certainly a car that used to be far more popular than it is now. Although I think its popularity has always been less in competitive league racing than it has been in public lobbies. But it's nice to see a BMW on track. For a little bit of variety from the 5 Porsches we have on server at the moment. Certainly making up the bulk of the cars here today. Niels Holm then and Anders Sorensen. The 74, and again I will always say that I am rooting for them entirely because they use the same race number as I do. They are driving the 74 Ferrari in the Borat SH racing car. And again, we saw much of them last week, despite the issues with their team in terms of the entry list breaking a little bit after I think there was a crash or something went wrong with the entry list. Unfortunately, both drivers didn't compete, but they still have an entry. They managed to finish the race, and they still scored points for their troubles, which is very fortunate. And then finally, at the moment, the 14th car maybe just leaves and rejoins to try and sort an issue out, hopefully. Pascal Tanner and Anton Inhoffner, as I say that, they actually do. In the 323 Porsche, another glorious racing car. So we've got a few, most of the Porsches I think are glorious racing. Got this one, we got this one, we got this one. No, wait, that's deep dive racing. Sorry, Dave Petzold. I assumed that the Dave Petzold and Forster winning are not in a glorious racing car, but I know that. Oh, we only have the two. I thought we had 3 last week, so we only have the 2 this time around. Pascal Reuter must have been the guy who left and rejoined, as I don't think I actually covered him. And he is teaming up with Ralph Brettabude, or Ralph Brettabude, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure on how to pronounce that, in the 84 Porsche. There is our drivers and our teams, and I'm sure we will see more of them throughout the session. Let's have a look then. Martin Kovac's lap time on race control is marked as a 14-minute 30. So, I'm assuming this is his first lap, which, no, it can't be. Yes, I thought not. No, the lap times have not yet clarified themselves on the race control, but Martin Kovac does the first fast lap of the race. It's the 36 car of Gottlieb having to avoid on the exit of turn 1 there. Thomas Jack, meanwhile, has crossed the line but has not yet set a time. Possible invalidation for them. Daniel Scott has joined the server as well, as I have just noticed, in the 31 McLaren. Come to enjoy the wet weather and the beautiful sights of this great track. As Kovac comes through Dunlop now up to the Degners, but he is the only person on the board at the moment with a time, and unfortunately because of the way the timing is working, I can't tell you who's going to set one next, but I can tell you who did, and it was Dave Petzold, and he goes 5 seconds slower than Kovac. Understandable, given the conditions, people have to work their way up. It is going to reduce in rain throughout the session, so the times should get quicker slightly until then, but it does not look to be a large reduction. Robin Moe set the 3rd time, a 2:10.9, 1.137 off of Kovac ahead. He is joined by Niels Holm and by Inhoffner in 4th. So you can see people are finding their footing. I think there was a little issue of Niels there, perhaps having to catch a slide. People are finding their footing in these conditions. They're struggling a little bit. It is very wet. It's not flooded, but it is very wet. The rain is still coming down. It is lessening, but it's still coming down. And we will certainly, I think, see a drop in these lap times by the end of the session. But by how much, I am not sure. And we'll certainly hope that everyone will be able to get a lap in. Last time out, sadly, I think they are signed out for this race. But last time out, we saw Leon Vessels do an absolutely fantastic drive. I mean, I said that Robin Moe started from the pit lane. He had a fantastic drive through the field because of an issue on the formation lap. Leon Vessels in the QRT car, the Bentley, if you don't remember, he started the race, meant to start the race P last, as the qualifying was dry and then started raining very early on in the 20-minute session. He unfortunately did not get a lap in the dry, and naturally couldn't get a lap in that was faster in the wet than anyone else. And as such, he had started back at the grid. He started second to last because of Robin Moe having to stop, as we see Niels Holm going a little bit on the exit of Spoon, a little bit off track there. But yes, Leon Vessels did a fantastic drive through the field to actually finish P3 ahead of Robin Moe, and undercut them quite significantly in the pit cycle, which, it having been a 100-minute race, was much more interesting, I think, in terms of when you make that strategy call. It probably will be today. We're both, I think all these cars, this is a 2-hour race, all these cars will probably go around the hour mark just to keep a bit of fair driving. Some might go a bit over, try and get some fresh tyres and some lower fuel runs when they get there. But I think most of these cars will pit around the hour mark. It's not going to be the same as last week, where it was the 50-minute mark, or was about the halfway, or was the halfway point. And we saw some take a bit of earlier, some take a bit longer. We'll see what the drivers do today. We'll see if anyone surprises us in terms of strategy. Yet to set a time. Daniel Scott in the Sky Tempesta racing car. And he is yet to set a lap, along with Gottlieb, Bretabude and Katsi. As in the chat, Sienbeck83 says, shame a small grid, summer holidays will not help. Otherwise, I was also on track in a Bentley. And that is fair, the summer holidays certainly won't help, but that's part of the... let's get a little bit of an odd moment there. I hope that's not going to happen again. I'm going to have to try and fix that. But yeah, no, it's unfortunately, sometimes summer holidays certainly will play a part in these things, but that's why we're doing the Summer Cup. It's a bit more of a casual league. We still commentate it, we still steward it, but it's meant so you can be more flexible. I mean, if you want to have a teammate, you can change your team assignments between races. You can have different drivers drive different cars. For example, I mean, Thomas Jack is driving in a small PP car, the small PP team, which I know on SimGrid, that you can create teams on, similar to the way you create them in iRacing. Has multiple members. I think I might actually be one of them. I can't quite remember. But if Thomas Jack, for example, can't make a race, he could hand it over to an entirely different team of 2 drivers or even 1 driver and still score the points for the team. That is part of the way this admittedly worked up. It was the idea, which is simply is the summer. People want to enjoy themselves. It's been quite a nice summer thus far. Certainly been hot in the UK as of late. So, you know, I think we've got a nice little lineup, and we've certainly got some very competitive drivers I know here today who will hopefully put on a very nice show in these conditions. 10 minutes to go in qualifying, then halfway down, halfway up. 3 drivers yet to set a lap time. Martin Kovac still on top of the grid, although he has improved his time by just over a second there, with 208.562 now. Robin Moe, however, catching close behind, a 209.327, that's 7 tenths in it. And we will certainly see if they can do anything. Coming out of the pits now, is it Robin Moe still in the car? Will it be Victor Paulin? It looks like Robin Moe is taking another crack at this wet weather quali. The gap over the course of the grid is only 5 seconds, which isn't insubstantial, but certainly in these conditions, with everyone only having done a few laps now, is quite a reasonable spread, I think. Most of the drivers within that 2-3 second range, certainly between Inhoffner and Angstman, there is a 2-second gap. The main point of departure from top drivers at the moment is P3, with Thomas Jack being a second ahead of Inhoffner and a second behind Kovac, finding himself well and firmly in what we at Racing Pals have termed the Bongus Zone, which is named after our director, the artist formerly known as Bingus McBongus, who used to sit in what I also call the Max Verstappen 2018 zone, where you're in the middle, you're in P3 or P4, and you're way far out from the guys in front, but you're also quite far out from the guys behind, and you're just comfortably sitting there. I think for a period it also became the Lando Norris 2019 zone until his engine had the woken moment, as that's the Ferrari, and I think that's the Ferrari. I'm not sure whether that was standing water that caused the Ferrari to move off there to the left hand on the exit spoon, or whether, and that perhaps caught Robin Moe off guard as well, or whether Robin Moe just tried to follow that Ferrari's line and didn't realise that he was also going to end up a little bit in the grass. But that's certainly not going to worry Robin Moe. This is his outlap still, and he will get to starting a new lap now once he crosses the line after the most imaginatively named corner in any circuit, last curve, which, considering all the other great actual names on this circuit, as you see Daniel Scott coming out of the pits there, having done a P7 worthy performance thus far. 2 cars still yet to set a lap time as Justin Gottlieb and Reuter. But we shall see what Robin Moe can do. But whilst we're doing that, coming to the line now and up on his best is Martin Kovac in the Honda. And he manages a 2:08.0. He's going to have a couple more laps in him if he has the fuel to do it. Certainly if he needs to return to pits, he can still do 1 or 2. But that is a 2:08 flat, essentially. And Thomas Jack, meanwhile, also crosses the line with 2:08.6, and he puts himself out of the Mongus zone, if we can really call it that, when it's about half a second between the top 3. But he puts himself into P2. Robin Moe, meanwhile, on this lap at the moment, not seeming to improve upon his time. Ralph Kettern then up on his time, 6 odd attempts right now, a very wide line through the hairpin there. Certainly a difficult corner in the dry, let alone in the wet. He's still up on his time, although only by a couple of tenths, but a couple of tenths is enough currently to put him up to P5 from where, to P6 from where he is right now to P9, maybe even to P5 actually if he is lucky, as P5 is only a 2.960 whilst he's on a 3.593. If he can get half a second, he can definitely get up to P6, but at the moment his time is dropping out of spoon. He was up 5 tenths, now it's only a tenth and a half. 130R might make or break it. Doesn't quite hit the apex, but gets, I think, a good clean exit. That has gained him a little bit of time, although so is Todd Curtis ahead of him, so Todd Curtis is looking to reclaim that immediately after this time gets set, whatever it might be, as he loses a lot of time out of the Casio Triangle and out of the last curve. It's going to be basically par after what was an excellent middle sector, and that is, unfortunately, going to be a gain of nothing at the end of the day. And that is how you essentially lose 5 tenths in half a track, which is very easily done in these conditions and at Suzuka. Meanwhile, Martin Kovac once again faster on his time, and that will be a 2:07.6. He returns to the pits, possibly for 1 or 2 more laps now. We will see if he comes out again. Thomas Jack only 5 hundredths up. It won't be enough. But can he use this advantage for an advantage on the next lap? We'll have to see as Todd Curtis crosses the line, and there is the P6 jump. It doesn't come from Kettern, it comes from Curtis. Meanwhile, Daniel Scott has put himself, has I think lost a few places to some of the cars ahead, and now down in 9th place. But he is up on his time as well, but unfortunately this lap is invalid. I think it might be an out lap actually, judging by the lap time. Kettern as well will be very unfortunate because he is currently again 4 tenths up into what is known, or out of what is known as 200R, for the radius is 200 radii, hence how they named it. It goes offline again, but it doesn't matter because he was already invalidated. And again, that will be unfortunate, but 3 minutes and 30 seconds remaining, a lap time of around 2 minutes here. If he's got enough of two more runs, he's got 2 more opportunities to make it work. Niels Holm then, meanwhile, currently sitting B13. Justin Gottlieb has set a lap, but it was a 2:15.3. It's 7 seconds off, and he is in the pit lane. I think he is just going to take the risk, say, I'm starting where I'm starting, and let the wet weather perhaps move some people aside. You know, Moses parting the sea, I think, is the strategy Gottlieb might be going for during this race. Niels then 9 tenths, 9 tenths up now. Let us see what can the Danish badged Ferrari do. It doesn't have the badge for the actual team, but there's definitely a Danish flag behind the 74 on the roof and on the bonnet. So let's have a look. I do love this livery. It is gorgeous. I believe Niels designed, no, I believe Anders designed it, sorry. I don't want to know who, I don't actually know which one of them did it. It is a lovely looking livery. It looks really nice. I do love the colours. as he is still, that is almost a second up. Unfortunately, with being 4 seconds, 4.8 seconds off of the leader, might not gain too much. Katsi is currently up by 8/10, which means that he probably won't get ahead of Katsi now, but certainly will jump Petzold and maybe put himself into a good position to take a greater chunk out on the next time around. See them absolutely mount the curbs in the Casio Triangle, the famous chicane section, which has been the site of many famous incidents in motor racing history, including particularly one of the 2 famous moments between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost in the late 80s, early 90s. As Niels Holm does improve, I don't actually think he did. I think maybe he lost a lot of time and I was too busy talking about Ayrton Senna to notice, or maybe he went off track a little bit. But unfortunately, he will have one more lap now to do it. Kovac, meanwhile, on a lap, he is at the hairpin. 1 minute remaining. Can you get to the end of this lap in a minute? Because his current lap is an out lap. It is invalid. It is 3 minutes 50 on the board. So if it's not an out lap, then he's at a big moment. But can he get around? Anders has officially taken credit in the chat for making the car livery, and the car livery is fantastic on the 74 Ferrari. Sorry, Niels Holm, any credit you were wrongly being given by me has been corrected. 30 seconds to go. Can Kovac make it? Well, he might, but let's have a look at someone who's not currently in pole position. I'm going to keep an eye on the track map as much as I can. But this is Pascal Reuter Pure RX. I shouldn't expect to be pronounced Pure Racing, but there is an X in there. Great looking livery itself. I think it's based on a... There is a real livery, it's very similar. I think the Manthe racing car livery is very similar in real life. And that is Kovac's lap done. He has not made it to the line just in time. He crossed the line and officially has finished. He's currently provisional pole with a 207. Thomas Jack in the pit lane, provisional P2 with 104.2. And Robin Moe not up on his time enough. He's only 500ths up on his current lap time. And he is 1.7 off at the pace. It's certainly looking like Kovac will take pole position for the second race in a row in what is some relatively similar conditions to the final qualifying at Silverstone, but certainly not the conditions that the actual qualifying laps are set on. As Pascal now 4/10 up, this could be P4 for him. Hits that curve very harshly. Second curve a little bit nicer. Comes down through last curve. 6/10 is the gap, and I think that will be P4 for Pascal Reuter, taking Inhofer's second place. I go back to the garage. Thomas Jack has apparently come across some people who were not rejoining entirely safe. Let's have a look then. So you can see as well the BOP. We used the custom BOP. We used the BOP that is the LFM BOP. That is balance of performance for anyone who is not in the know. Essentially, we give the handicap or the benefit in some cases to the cars based upon their performances or the performance that is worked out by the LFM team. The only car which we have provided a balanced performance for, which isn't LFM bopped, is the Lexus, as they do not bop it because there are not enough of their people apparently drive it. And so the 36 car of Justin Gottlieb is our own bop, which at 15 kilograms seems reasonable. I don't think that's the reason for why he is currently P14. But for the rest, as you can see, Kovac gets a 16 kilogram lighter car here, whilst Thomas Jack 6 kilograms added. Now hopefully that will help balance the cars. Unfortunately, sometimes driver skill obviously will come into it, as the drivers are now going for their formation up, which means I can hit drive again because ACC is like that. And we can see these cars take to the track for the first time before they will go green flag and start racing one another for the next 2 hours. Anders in the chat saying that his teammate ran out of fuel just before the finish line and jumped to 11th, but they think they could have got 10th if that had not happened. But they'll start side by side. Actually, they'll start side by side with P12. They'll start behind P9. Maybe they can make a move, work into turn 1 and take the 10th place that they believe they would have been able to get anyway. So your grid then at the moment is Kovac in the lead, followed by Thomas Jack, Robin Moe and Bretta Buda, the first 2 rows of the grid once they come to the side-by-side formation lap. Pascal Tanner then takes P5. We can see Daniel Scott there right behind him, followed by Todd Curtis. I say Pascal Tanner, sorry, the thing has not yet updated, or had not yet updated. It's actually in Hofner in the car at the moment, the teammate of Tanner, and Daniel Scott and Todd Curtis behind him, followed by Dennis Henning in the other glorious racing car. Axman then P9, followed by Ketten, Holm, Katze and Venning, and as I said, Justin Gottlieb in P14 in the Bentley. Sorry, not the Bentley, the Lexus. It's very similar shape, but I should have known it's Gottlieb. Of course, he's always in the Lexus. No Bentleys here today, sadly. Hopefully, at Bathurst, we will see a few come out and play. I joke this, I would like to try and convince, I was saying about the Bonga zone, I'd like to try and convince Musselheim, our director, to come and drive the Bathurst in the V12. Unfortunately, I think not only is it a bit ACC fatigued at the moment, but also we have the 24 hours of Le Mans on that day, which might be a bit too tired afterwards to compete in, and another endurance race, even one a little bit shorter, just a tad shorter, 96 minutes Bathurst compared to 24 hours. Which, whilst we're doing this, if you're on our Discord, recently today I have put up the channels for the special event, not the special event, but for the event 2 weeks time. This weekend was Road America. In 2 weeks time there will be the 24 hours of Le Mans on iRacing, as the drivers now take side by side. Head down to the iRacing channel, get yourself the iRacing role, and feel free to join one of our teams. I'm sure we'll be setting up for the race in 2 weeks. But right now, we have a race here, and Thomas Jack is a little bit ahead of Kovac, but things will balance their way out as they are side by side through the Castillo Triangle. This will be the start of the race. As they come, they will be told the 70-mile-an-hour limit. I believe they will start at the first checkered flag line. Oh, actually, it might be a little bit longer. Let's have a look. I can't remember. No, it's going to be the second. So, 2 hours on the clock. It is raining. No changes in conditions expected. 14 cars fighting for position as they go green at Suzuka. And that is a good launch from Martin Kovac, followed by Thomas Jack. He has not managed to keep in range as he's now under threat from Robin Moe behind. The Dark Horse Mustang. There's a little bit of contact somewhere near the back. It was the 74 car and the 70. You can see the spray being whipped up by all these cars on the same lap. Have a look at that after the start of this race session. Not sure, the 70 car is still ahead. Sorry, the 70 car has lost a place to Holm. Yes, he has. The timing tower is taking its moments to correct. I believe it's doing so now. Oh, big shunt! That's the Ferrari into the Ferrari. That is the 70 car on the 74. That was a big shunt, maybe just locked up under braking in the wet conditions. Now he should let that go. He should not take that position. Obviously the stewards will look at it, but if he gives the position back without loss of a actual place, the stewards might deem it no further action. That was a big shunt into the rear end of that Ferrari, and that might be some damage for Niels Holm. As we see, Ralph Ketten does go. He went around the outside of the hairpin and gave the place back. Certainly not what you want to be doing on the lap, one of all laps, with 2 hours, 1 hour and 58 minutes now left to go. Doesn't look like there's too much damage on the front of the other Ferrari, so the rear damage doesn't tend to show up as much on these cars. No bonnet pops, no nothing like that, so I think they're relatively good. That was almost a big crash, as there is a wide 130R from Niels Holm, which is allowing Ketter to try. Niels cannot get it done, and he's going to have to try and be very careful on this rejoin. And I think Lex Lexus is going to get through. And that is Justin Gottlieb. He's already gained 1 place off Tobias winning. Sorry, Austin winning. I don't know why I said Tobias. Justin Gottlieb now drag racing with the Ferrari down to turn 1. And makes it done very nicely. Sorry, I said that the last curve was the most creatively named corner in motorsports, but this is also just called first corner. So, as that is around, that's Ralph Ketter. That's the Ferrari back to the back of the grid. And certainly, Justin Gottlieb, now P11, worked his way up quite nicely through the field. Now, there was a collision between 90 and 95 cars. Let's have a quick look at what that was. So this is Angstman, and he's going to do the same thing, very similar, but luckily just sort of snooker shot there. Actually, I think Todd Curtis says, "Oh, thank you very much. I'll take that little bit of a fender bender, as a team name is, and use it to propel myself a little bit further forward." Now let's see what happened between these cars. We saw them come together at Degbert, the 70 and the 74. Let's see what happened to them on the race start. There was a little bit of contact here. As you see, yes, just a little bit too much turn in, I think, there from the 70 car. The 74 trying to get slowed down, can't turn in without risking locking up. And that is going to be, I think, a racing incident. But we will see what happens with the other instance we have thus far seen on track in the post-race stewarding. Todd Curtis then now behind Dennis Henning, who is in the Glorious Racing 2 car. There's about a gap of a second up the road then. Sorry, there's a gap of a second between him and this guy here, Pascal Reuter, who is chasing down Daniel Scott. I know it is a Pure Racing car. I've seen the livery says Pure Racing on it. It really reminds me of a Manthey car, and it is a lovely livery. It's at another big moment. Oh, and almost a second pull ball into the Porsche. What's that thing called with the clicky clackers? I can't remember. The Einstein's cradle of Porsches. That's what that was, almost. Pascal Reuter is going to have to then work a little bit more to catch Daniel Scott. That's given Daniel some breathing. But that is almost a Porsche. Todd Curtis had to avoid that. He might have something to say about that in the stewarding, because that has allowed Angstman to get through into P8, as he had to come away from the chicane because he was trying to make sure he did not get off. He got off the. He got. No, I don't want to say off the brakes, but he had to make sure that he didn't lock up as the car ahead unexpectedly slowed, as the transference of the velocity was taken between the other two Porsches, and he had to avoid hitting Dennis Henning in the rear end. Sadly, it looks like Justin Gottlieb has lost a place or two. He is now down to P12. We've lost a car, I'm not quite sure who. We are now down to 13 cars. But Justin Gottlieb is now P12, and Ralph Ketter in P13, only half a second between them. Maybe we'll be fighting later on. Let's have a look up the top of the field. P3 then is a battle now between Thomas Jack and Robin Moe for that second place and the rights, I guess, to go and hunt down Martin Kovac. Now, are they going to battle? Are they perhaps going to be clever and discussing themselves in the channels? And I believe they're both probably in a voice channel together. Perhaps maybe trying to just simply gain on Kovac for fighting one another. Thomas Jack decides the curb is the racing circuit almost in its entirety there, and glides in the Mustang over it, whereas the McLaren has to worry a little bit more about its suspension, and it can't do so much. It can do more than it used to. Certainly Evo, since the physics update a year or so ago, a couple of years ago now, it's been able to do more than it was able to do when I first started in ACC, especially at Imola, which is obviously where its lines have basically changed entirely. A little wiggle there from Orimo, but I don't think it's got quite the ability to take bumps as the Mustang ahead, which is a big American motor. Dennis Henning now right on the rear of Reuter. I'm not sure if Reuter had a moment there, as that gap closed very, very quickly. See them now coming through the S's. There's a little fight developing for P6 here, because Pascal Reuter is in P6, followed by Henning just under a second behind. Anksman then just under a second behind him, and Todd Curtis under a second behind him, and now Katsi, P10, is now within a second off this rather snake-like train that is forming between P6 and P10. Well, I think Katsi is dropping off a little bit further than the rest of them. As Henning actually drops a little bit off of Reuter on that lap, although Reuter goes very deep into the hairpin. That is going to allow Henning to get back up a little bit. I think Reuter's got the pace. I think if he can get the car together and get it solidly in shape, then he can pull away quite nicely, whilst Henning is now facing a threat from Anksman and Curtis. Well, Robin Moe has dropped a little bit back off of Thomas Jack. The gap now 1 second between them. However, Tom, 4 seconds behind Kovac, needs to start putting in some better lap time. The last lap for Kovac was an invalid 10.9 to 10.9, but Thomas Jack was valid, but it was 11.7. Now Kovac has just completed a 10.6. Thomas Jack needs to start putting in faster lap times. His time that lap was 11.3, and that is not going to be enough if he wants to fight for that lead in the race anytime soon. And as we know, Kovac might start having troubles towards the end, especially in these conditions. I don't know what the wear is going to be like. If someone is off there, that will be... I think someone was off there. It might be that they... yes. There's Pascal Reuter. Must have gone to the gravel there. Somehow the camera missed him on the exit. That is him down to P10. Certainly showing the conditions can play a little bit of havoc with the cars here. We've certainly seen that on a few occasions already. But like I say, as I was saying, Thomas Jack and Martin Kovac. Kovac might start suffering towards the end of the stint, towards the end of the race. But by the time he's done that, Thomas Jack cannot allow himself to be in that range where he can afford to suffer. And as he was last race, take things a little bit more nicely, knowing that he has a large gap to play with against the car behind. At the moment, Robin Moe back in those 5 temps, looking like the person that really needs to be getting ahead. This was a team game. If they were in a team together, I would say needs to be getting ahead to take that fight to Kovac, but they're not in a team and they're both fighting for their own respective positions in a championship, especially for Moe after last race finishing P4. When they probably feel that they should have finished if they had the correct start, P3 or even P2 if they had been able to take the fight to Thomas Jack early on. As Frederick Schublem, also known as Cheba in RP, says he had to skip this one due to summer holiday activities. Looking forward to joining you on the grid for the next one, and I'm very much looking forward to joining us, because certainly Cheba is someone that has a lot of exciting racing in them. when they really get going. And I look forward to seeing him back, providing some good action on track at Bathurst, as we're seeing some action potentially here into turn 1. And I said earlier, one of the sites of famous controversy in motorsports was the last curve. Doing the Casio triangle between Senna and Prost. Well, another point was here. Thankfully for them, Angstrom was a little bit further away to do to Henning what I think it was Prost. Was it Prost on that occasion did to Senna? I can't remember which way round it was. Either way, one of them was one and one was the other. Angstrom really sticking to the rear of the Porsche. I think give it time, patience, Angstrom will have him possibly in the next few corners, well not next few corners, possibly at the end of this lap, if not within a few laps. But we will see, does the Porsche have strength through the second sector against the Aston? Very possibly, it looks like he's gaining a little bit there. It's evening out slightly. They come up to the kink before the hairpin. Now we're seeing a lot of people go quite wide here. Angstrom takes a quite shallow angle, gets a nice exit line, I think. The Porsche a little bit ahead now, a little bit further ahead than they were previously. But the Aston maybe on the straights, which the next basically half the track is, maybe can make some gains, as he is also now being a little bit more threatened by Curtis and Katsi behind. What we'll have to see, it's 8/10. We'll see what the gap is at 130R and into the Casio triangle. 8/10 at the moment, not particularly gaining. The new Porsche a little bit more speed than the old. 0.7 now. 0.6, a better line for the Aston through 130R. 0.5 it is. And up to the Casio triangle. Will the Porsche, a lot of curb usage by the Aston, bumping, clattering along them. That's 0.3 now, the gap in it can. Oh, he gets a slide on the exit of the last curve. And that's going to put him down a bit. That's 0.5 now. He looks to that inside again, but he's not going to be far enough. That's going to compromise his entry a little. Oh, that's the timing tower server goes a bit. I think we're back. But that's going to be, then again, 0.3 is the gap. And we'll watch this again. I've been keeping an eye on Inhoffner. Inhoffner at P4 has been harrying Robin Moe. Now, Robin Moe has dropped off of Thomas Jack significantly now. 7.4 seconds is the gap. Maybe he had a moment, maybe he had an incident, maybe an off-track. But Inhoffner was within a second on that last lap. Now 1.8. Maybe that's why. Maybe Robin Moe again had an incident and that put them into contention. But we'll see if they can challenge for P3 in a similar way to how Wessels challenged last week or 2 weeks ago in the Bentley. Right, 0.7 now the gap between Angstrom. You can see the Porsche like Stegner. It's going to like the hairpin. But after that is a lot of straights. If Angstrom can keep the car together, keep it from sliding, good exits, go quite deep into the hairpin though, and that's going to allow Todd Curtis to pull ahead. That's not done him any favours. He had one Porsche to get past, now he's got two. And one of them is the bright green, and he can't make it work through 200R. Gets a little toe on the grass, he avoids collision. But that is going to set him back against not just the Porsche he was battling, but now against this Porsche that has finally found themselves between them. We are only now 15 minutes through this race, and we've got 1 hour and 45 minutes. So again, you know, whether he can do it now or not, he's got plenty of time to make it up. As the cars are getting a little more spread out now. But Angstrom now 0.5 is the gap. It might not be enough. I mean, he got a better exit, but we've seen before 0.3 wasn't really enough either. 0.4 now the gap. And Curtis, 0.7 between him and Henning. Now, I don't know whether that line is particularly working for Angstrom. I mean, he's looking to the inside as though he's going to overtake now. it might be a safety line, it might be simply if he locks up, he wants to minimize the chance of collision. But at the same time, the line just feels like it's losing him into that corner rather than if he was following on the racing line. Now, Reuter now back into contention with Angstman. Will it be a third Porsche that the Aston Martin sees in front of him in a couple of laps times perhaps? Still no update or change on the weather. It is wet, not flooded, but no expected change in conditions, at least for the next 30 minutes, unless there is a small little change in the middle there, which sometimes can happen, can appear and disappear. If you have an amount of change, like a decrease or an increase between the 5 and 10 minute mark, or between the current 10 minute mark, and between the 10 and 30 minute mark, that is less than the gap. You can sometimes see them come and then go, and then come back again when it reaches the current time gap. But I think it's going to hold pretty true to this weather at the moment, as Todd Curtis wide on the exit of Spoon, or in the middle of Spoon, sorry, and that is going to allow Angstman on 130R, I think, could make it beforehand. Well, he is losing a little bit here. 0.2 is the gap. Is he going to try, or is he going to wait and see if he can do it into the triangle? I think he's going to wait. He's got to be very careful. I think I don't think he got that right. He's dropped time. He did not. The problem with that is, in these conditions, you have to make sure it's perfect. You can't bog down. You can't come off the throttle too early. You was following. You can't do anything. You have to try and take that 130R following as well as you have ever taken in your life. And he did not manage that. And that meant he could not make a move into the Casio triangle on this lap. Again, he's looking to the inside, and I understand why. As someone sounds as though they're in the dirt. Maybe that was just a little sound effect of someone dipping a toe. But Angstman still not currently in position to take his P7 back off Todd Curtis. You can see again Reuter coming back through in this section. He has the advantage. The Porsche definitely has the advantage throughout the curves, as probably to be expected against the Aston. Not only is it rear engine, there's front engine, as that is Angstman on the grass again. He tried to collect it in the little slip road that makes up the short circuit end of lap, which is where it cuts across back onto the start-finish straight. But unfortunately couldn't end up back on the grass, and that is Reuter now. That is the third Porsche. The third Porsche has made it through, and Angstman now down to P9. It's Reuter almost going a bit wide there, I think at the hairpin, and almost making place, gift wrapping the place back to Angstman, but no such luck for the Aston Martin. And that, unfortunately, I think is going to be the end of this battle for a little while. Angstman, I think, could take it back. He's been that second now. He's got this time. A little bit of slide out of the Spoon there. But I don't know when that move will be made. Now, Ralph Kettern back into P12, past Gottlieb. Gottlieb back down P13. Now he will gain a place from the start, but is currently of all the cars on track P last. But can he fight back in the Vassar Sullivan Lexus? I think that was a big slide. Good catch, but big slide, which is going to lose him some time to the car ahead as the gaps begin to stretch out. This is still the main battle happening on track. Is this Porsche train with the Aston Martin caboose? And I think that will be the fact going forward. It does not appear that Todd Curtis is falling back particularly off of Henning, and Reuter still within that 2-second gap. 1.1 is it. And in these conditions, plenty of mistakes are being made, which is causing the others to catch up just slightly. We've seen Angstman in particular make a few mistakes, which has led to him down into P9 for the time being. Curtis now 0.6 still is the gap, 0.7 make that. Gonna be curious to see. He clearly has the pace to stay in touch. Henning maybe slight advantage, takes a very shallow line there through Spoon. That might compromise his exit. And that's allowing Reuter to now be within 0.4 seconds as they come to the back stretch. And that is a much cleaner 130R behind Travick, only lost a tenth there, back to 0.3. Not going to make anything into triangle. Oh, big clash on the curb. I think he got a little bit sideways, having to collect the car. Again, I'm surprised that so many drivers are trusting that curve in these conditions. I mean, obviously it's working, but it is causing some issues, some clattering. In this weather, you'd think it'd be slippery. It certainly looks it from some of the cars that have time to take it. 0.3 seconds. Curtis having a little moment into first curve there, first corner. Now they come into the S's. I don't think any moves will be pulled off in here today, at least not beyond the start of the race. I mean, might get a good move, might get a good luck, a little try at some point, but certainly the goal of a lot of the corners here at Suzuka is to simply try and stay within touch until you get to these zones. Degner certainly is an opportunity, but I think too far back now. The hairpin is probably one of the other big ones. Now the 95 car, that's Angstman. He's got damage. There's no collision on the board. Let's have a look what happened as he gets going. So this is Angstman, and he gets into the grass and gravel in the S's, gets back on track, takes the car back. And on exit, he gets on the curb and the slipperiness just hits him. The traction control cannot counterbalance. And he is face first into one of the famous green, red and white walls of Suzuka. That is put Angstman down to P11 now. And 8.4 seconds off of Holm. So he's lost another 2 places in that incident. Not the best of races thus far for the Aston Martin, and now damage on top to make things a little bit harder. Reuter taking a very shallow line there through 130R. He doesn't seem to be using all the track on the exits, but not the first time we have seen that. We saw Todd Curtis do it, not from him, sorry, but we saw Todd Curtis do something similar in Spoon, although this time is the attacking car. I'm wondering if there's just some issues with the conditions, just trying to avoid a spin. We've seen a lot of cars taking a lot of different lines. Now, of course, in wet weather racing, generally, you do take wet lines. There's a collision between Curtis and Henning. Oh, and I think that was Reuter getting a little bit caught on the exit. Curtis is still spun around. He's going to need to get that car corrected. The 74 car coming through now. I think he's let off the throttle a little bit there just to allow him through. That is Todd Curtis now down to P10. And that has allowed Pascal Reuter to make his way up to P6 once the timing tower corrects itself. And Dennis Henning now down to P7. Let's see if we can see what happened there. So this is out of turn 1 in the middle. There's the quarter panels, and yep. Now, if that comes to the stewards, I think Curtis will probably claim that the Glorious Racing car maybe was off the track. They certainly have a track limits violation on this lap. I don't know whether that was for that moment at turn 1 or if it was for the part of the recovery. Maybe they went off track in the meantime. I did not catch it. But obviously Dennis Henning will claim that there was not axle to axle. The rules in Racing Powers are you have to have wheel hub to wheel hub, axle to axle, dust to dust. And he was not axle to axle, arguably, and he might say that he was entitled to space. He was turning into the corner. He might have gone wide, but he was back on track at the moment of contact. We'll have to see if that gets stewarded and what the stewards will say. Now, obviously, if it does get stewarded, it depends on who also thinks they are most aggrieved. Dennis Henning, if he gets his place back, might simply forget about it by the end of the race. And it will have to depend on whether Todd Curtis feels that he was the hard done by car in that instant. But for the moment, whatever happens afterwards, that is Curtis down to P10, Henning to P7. And unfortunately, it's also robbed us a little bit of our major fight that was going on. Henning, I think, has the pace, so he doesn't have too much damage. He's got a little bit on the front end, you can see there. He probably has the pace to attack Reuter again. We'll have to see when that point comes about. So let's have a look. Your race leader, we are coming to the 1 hour 30 minute mark, a quarter of the way through the race. It will be a 1 pit stop in this race, certainly. There will be, we double check the rules, there is a maximum stint timer of 70 minutes for this race and no mandatory pit stops. So the latest that cars can pit if they want is the 70-minute mark. That is, of course, a little bit of a balance for some cars with bigger fuel tanks. As I've just seen this, Robin Moe picks up a drive-through, presumably, as there is no live stewarding here, everything is post-race stewarded, for track limits. And that is going to hamper their race massively. The gap to them, to Inhofe behind, is 5 seconds. The gap then further behind is 13.9. This will likely put them back to P6 once they take it. And when they take it, I mean, I'd assume they might take it right away in these conditions to not risk another violation which could lead to a DSQ. Is coming around and into the pit lane. He comes. He's going to yeet it right up to the limit. I hope he made that. It's taking to the pits. I don't know. He is... Is he getting out of the car? He had a drive-through. He's sitting in the pit lane. I don't know what's happened. And that is Robin Moe out of this race. And I presumably then his teammate also, Victor Bollin. I don't know if anything happened to them or whether they just cannot, they do not want to suffer through the conditions any longer. Not that it's really all that wet. Maybe they had another issue which perhaps caused their off track. Certainly last race we saw them have the issue which caused them to drop to the, well, to the garage. Oh, as you see, Thomas Jett really sailing the car through Degner. But I don't know whether that was an issue perhaps with one or both of their equipments. But that is the number 3 car currently out of this race. Whether they will come back in or not is up to them. Certainly the teammate of Robin Moe is in the voice channels, so I'm not sure what is going on there. But that is allowed Inhofe up to P3. And Daniel Scott now into P4. And that will certainly be a good haul of points for the McLaren driver if he finishes this race after the DNF a race ago with the lower turnout at Suzuka. A lot of these drivers can benefit from simply finishing the race, as Justin Gottlieb has a spin and maybe also about to retire his car. This is becoming more and more of an endurance race for the drivers as we carry on. And that is Gottlieb also now retired from this race. I mean, I was worried about the conditions and the wetness, but it's only a wet track. It's not flooded. It's not particularly overly wet. I'm surprised. I think maybe just people haven't practiced in the conditions which were expected. But Martin Kovac continues to lead comfortably with a gap now of 17.7 seconds. Thomas Jack trying his best, but with the tyres on the Mustang maybe going, is losing a little bit of comparative lap time. Kovac still in the 2:10s. Thomas Jack last lap was a 2:12. That is quite a significant margin to try and overcome at this stage of the race. Pascal Reuter, meanwhile, has been passed at some point and must have missed it by Dennis Henning. As they now come through the Degners. And Henning now looking to chase down Daniel Scott, what has very quickly become P4. Two seconds is the gap between the Porsche and the McLaren, but 1.5 is between the Porsche and the Porsche behind. Daniel Scott certainly looks to be doing quite well in these conditions, despite his misgivings I know he's had about the conditions. Certainly punching above the expectations that he set for himself. Will he be able to defend, though, against the Porsche behind of Dennis Henning as they come to what will be, I think, the start of lap 16 for them, as Martin Kovac already has completed his 15th lap. Dennis Henning then 0.8 seconds behind. But at the same time, Todd Curtis is chasing down Niels Holm, P8. Keep an eye on the gap. This gap is closer. Maybe a maneuver can be made. He comes out, has a look. You'd think he'd want to use the slipstream for as long as possible, but does return to the racing line for the corner. Oh, but he gets a wide middle portion of it. Doesn't lose too much, 0.7 still the gap. That's going to set him back for a couple of corners at least. Meanwhile, Henning right on the tail of Daniel Scott through Degner. Followed closely himself by Reuter behind. Within a second are the three cars just about, or they were. Reuter was in a second of Henning for a second there, and Henning within a second of Daniel Scott at least. Within 2 seconds overall to come to Spoon. Now this is where the Porsche maybe can get a good exit on the McLaren. 0.4 is now the gap, but it's dropped to 0.5. McLaren should be able to take a straight line speed, but there will be obviously the slipstream from the car ahead for the Porsche to use. I don't know if he'll make it into 130R. It doesn't look like he's going to. Daniel Scott defends quite nicely into the Casio triangle. They now go over the curbs, clattering as we have seen so many times before now. Or a little slip on the exit off the final corner, which again we have seen before. We saw from Anxman before when he was fighting these very cars. A look to the inside, does not have the space, and that compromises his entry a little bit and allows Daniel Scott a little bit of breathing space, as Pascal Reuter now right on the rear of Henning. Henning clearly has the pace on Reuter. I think that is certainly the case, but Reuter is getting into position to make potential moves and then be the defending car, because Daniel Scott is able to keep Henning up through these moments where Henning is trying to take P4. So the interior cam can't see anything because of the rain. Let's go bonnet cam. See, the gap is basically nothing. I think that's going to be a move into the hairpin possibly. 1.1 second is the gap. See, struggling to get the cars turned in. They'll keep them under control on the exit. You can hear the puddles being splashed through. Oh, that's a big slide from Pascal Reuter as they snaps back. And that's going to end his campaign for P5 for the time being. But can he get ahead of Katsi? Katsi's coming up fast. He needs to get on that throttle. He needs to get the car started. He's got it going. And he's going to have to try and fight back as Henning looks into 130R. Daniel Scott says no thank you. Into the Casio triangle then. The next move might be made. No, early on the brakes for both. In these conditions, I won't take too many risks with dive bombs. And there's going to be another fight for the rest of this lap coming. Again, Henning looks to the inside, but 2 tenths is the gap, and that's not going to be enough. And once again, out of position. And that allows Daniel Scott to take a couple more tenths back for himself. Pascal Reuter then, he has dropped 9.6 seconds. Now as that's Daniel Scott, he does it, he goes wide out of Dunlop, and that has allowed Dennis Henning through. I think that will allow Dennis Henning to gain some headway now that his little cork stopper has been overcome. Daniel Scott's job then is to maintain that P5 if and when I think perhaps Reuter catches the gap between him and Reuter now up to 8 seconds, or down to 8 seconds from what was 9 between Reuter and Henning. Obviously Daniel has been held up by the overtake and the off track that preceded it, or that enabled it to be more accurate. Daniel Scott, 1.5 seconds already to Dennis Henning. Can he fight back, or will he be looking just to see if he can create some consistent lap times? I mean, 1 hour and 20 minutes to go. We've already lost some drivers to conditions. We've already seen many instances. Daniel Scott himself goes very wide there. That is an invalidated lap for him. We saw the McLaren of Robin Moe and Victor Borlin get a drive-through and then retire from the race, likely due to that. But it is a long race. They could have stayed in and got a very good haul of points. Instead, I think the gap at the front, at the top of the championship, will currently looking to be extended by both Kovac and Thomas Jack. Thomas Jack will keep himself, if he can maintain P2, in position to fight come Bathurst and the last race at the Nordschleife circuit. Gap now 2 seconds between Henning and Daniel Scott. Reuter, after his spin at Spoon, an unfortunate slide which he tried to catch but caught a little too well, snapping the other way. 7.9 seconds between himself and Daniel Scott. Not quite the progress he would want to be made, but certainly looking as that's a massive gap decrease, and that's Daniel Scott. Daniel Scott must have had a crash, must have had an incident, and also has decided to retire from this race, which is again very unfortunate. Again, this is a race that is truly becoming endurance for the drivers involved. That is going to allow Henning some breathing room. Reuter behind 11.4 seconds now. Katze 3 seconds behind him, and Todd Curtis, after his own adventures, is 2.6 seconds behind Katze. Catern still last, but chasing down Anxman, who is themselves 9 seconds behind Holm, who is 9 seconds behind Curtis. The gaps are spreading out quite nicely, but still a few little pockets where battles may fall in the near future. 1 hour 17 remaining. That puts us 7 minutes away from potential early pit stoppers, as in the pit lane is Pascal Reuter. Now Pascal, if he takes the pit here, he's going to have to pit again. Sorry, yes, he pit. The stint timer is 70 minutes. If he pits now, he will have to pit again before the end of this race, unless he comes out of the pit lane at 1 minute 10. We shall have to see what happens there. Catern then through to 9th place. Todd Curtis chasing down Katze still. 1.7 seconds is the new gap, as Kovac takes the line to complete lap 20 of what looks to be coming up to 45 odd by the time we finish this race. Probably more than that, actually. Reuter is on the move again. I can see him moving on the mini-map, but will have to take a splash and dash at the end of this race to make up for the stint timer, which again is set to 70 minutes, as far as I'm aware. Or at least it should be. Ralph Catern, meanwhile, now on the rear of Anxman. See the damage that the Aston Martin has sustained. They might, I think, if they are playing the stint timer, they will go in at the minute 10 mark, or at least as close to it to come out after it. And they will do so in order to repair that damage, and I think swap driver as well to Michael Steinbeck. Now, Pascal Reuter has remained in the car, which is a curious thing, considering they have 2 drivers assigned. Ralph Brettabule is the second driver, and I certainly saw them driving earlier. They maybe will pit in 14 minutes instead and hand the car over for a third stint, but with the second driver. We'll have to see what happens there, but of course at the moment you can see behind them is Thomas Jack. They are blue flagged and 40 seconds behind the car in P8. Morgan Christian Yanksson then also into the pit lane. Now again, the timing is not ideal, but they had just lost that place to Ketter, but they will have to pit again if they don't come out after the 1 minute 10, and I don't think I've ever seen a repair timer on ACC that is going to take more than 4 minutes to allow them to do so without having to stop again. Martin Kovac, meanwhile, still in the race. Almost 30 seconds is the gap. He is sailing through this course, whilst Thomas Jack, 20 seconds ahead of Inhofe, going to be stuck a little bit behind Reuter, who should, hopefully, not be too much of a challenge for Tom to get ahead of. course, with an hour and 13 minutes, anything could still happen. Martin Kovac could very well have an incident of their own, and we've seen play many other drivers. So simply have to wait and see. In Hofner, meanwhile, let's have a quick look down here. The Austrian flagged Porsche Glorious Racing car sitting quite comfortably in P3 since the retirements of both Daniel Scott and Robin Moe, leaving them with a good gap between themselves and both P2 and P4, again about 20 seconds behind and in front. Oh, as that's, yep, not okay, sorry, that's Pascal Reuter getting out of the way in the hairpin. I don't know whether that's intentional or not, but that allows Thomas Jack through. And he'll be able to continue in clean air for some time. The next car on track ahead of him is still Martin Kovac, although Martin Kovac is coming up to the back of Ralph Catern, and maybe we'll put another car between himself and Thomas Jack in case of any incident later on in the race. Todd Curtis now also having passed Steinbeck, who did take the car over from Angstman in that Aston Martin 95 car. Todd Curtis gaining still, now a second behind Katzi, just under now the green and yellow Porsche. As soon as I go to watch him, it goes a little bit wider smooth. We'll have to try and make the attempt again. But it's chasing the BMW down quite methodically now. And I think hopefully we're going to put themselves in a position to give us a nice little fight for what is currently P5. Angstman makes a dive up the inside, goes very deep. Luckily, no collision. That is going to set Tom Curtis back a little bit as Angstman takes the secondary chicane and comes back on track. I don't think that was intentional. I think that was a misjudgment of braking and has set him back a little bit further on these cars that are a lap ahead of him. Dennis Heading, meanwhile, living a nice life, has come to be up on their best time delta. Now their best time thus far was 12.96, a little bit further behind the car ahead that had a 12.0, and certainly behind the car in P1, which is a 9.945. But we shall have to see whether they can perhaps make any dents upon the car ahead in the near future. Certainly their last lap was a second slower than in Hofner. Although this lap looking perhaps a little bit better. Katzi still being chased by Curtis. See a couple of dents in the front of the BMW perhaps. A little bit of a jerky lag there. We shall see, can Todd Curtis 1.3 seconds is the gap as they come up to 130R. They seem pretty evenly matched at the moment. So Todd can bide his time. Now we are under the 110 mark. 1:08 remaining. 1 hour 8 minutes remaining. And so pit stops can now definitely be taken without fear of not making the 70-minute stint timer, which should be in operation at this race. Certainly it must be for Pascal Reuter, whose second driver has yet to take the car over. So we shall have to see. As that is Gikatsi going wide on the first corner, and Todd Curtis getting ahead of them by the S's. That fight that we wanted to see sadly was very, very short, but that has allowed Todd Curtis to get back up to P5, and now has quite a gap to reclaim if they want to get to Dennis Henning by the end of this race. But with 1 hour and 7 minutes remaining, I certainly think it's doable. We shall simply have to see what can be done. Michael Steinbeck, repair does not seem to have actually been done on that car. I think they're still carrying the damage on the front end. It might be only a little bit of damage, and therefore they have not taken the whole amount. Or they have not taken any of it, sorry. In ACC, you don't have a choice. You either take it or you don't. Unlike iRacing, where you can take a certain amount and still leave the pit lane once the required repairs are done, even if optionals are yet to be completed. But yeah, it doesn't have that much of an effect on the car. If it isn't too long, you have got that little bit of a calculation you have to do. Obviously, if the repair is too much and too long, it might not be worth taking it, because you'll lose more time repairing it than you will actually racing it. And the same way goes if it's too little, you might as well say, I need those extra couple of attempts to save. So, you know, don't want to come and take them because they're so minor, even if they might be done in only a second or two. Cassie is not being lost by Todd Curtis yet. They are still within about a second and a half of the Porsche, losing a little bit through the S's, which is to be expected between the Porsche and the BMW. But they may regain that on the straights, certainly after Spoon, in 200R. We shall have to see whether Yaroslav Katsi can come and fight back in the Walking Horse Motorsport car against Todd Curtis, but they're currently sitting quite comfortably in P6. Certainly ahead due to some retirements of many other teams in the championship. This will be a championship defining race, I think, for some of these teams who either will be able to capitalise on either not being here or having a bad race last time out, whilst others are away and returning from Bathurst. Certainly disappointed to see that Daniel Scott did not finish the race, considering that he DNF'd at Silverstone as well, and this would have given him a good haul of points no matter what to take against any opponents that may have beaten him last time out due to that DNF. Again, surprise at Robin Moe and Victor Borlin, who, after a P3 finish last race, even in that drive-through, I think would have been able to climb back up. And now going to allow Thomas Jack and Martin Kovac to extend their lead over them in the championship, especially, sorry, they had a P4 finish last race, especially as Leon Wessels, unfortunately, was unable to make it today due to a planned holiday. But was P3 last race out as well. And a championship fight, therefore, only a 4-race season this. We have done Silverstone, we are here at Suzuka now, we have Bathurst and Nordschleife to come, and certainly it looks like Thomas Jack, Martin Kovac will be the fight of the championship. Kovac currently, well, taking the lead quite successfully. Niels Holm is now behind Pascal Tanner. Very close, 0.4 seconds gap. I think Tanner maybe had an incident there. We shall have to see as we come to the 1:02.55 mark now. Predictions for pit stops, I do not quite know as of yet. You'd think the two, again, like last race, you would think those who are teams will take the pit stop around the hour mark to divide the time evenly. That is not necessarily true. Certainly some might play to their strengths. As Pascal Tanner in the dirt out of Degner 1, gets back on track in Degner 2, but that's going to again allow Niels Holm to be right on their rear. But Kovac is coming through as well, and Niels gets out of the way of the P1 driver, who will now have to get around, maybe hoping to use any disruption that Kovac may provide against Pascal Tanner as an advantage. Unfortunately, I think through 200R, Tanner is simply going to allow Kovac through and not lose much time compared to Niels, and there he does. And the gap still within a second, but 0.7 now. But yes, as I was saying, with pit stops, pit cycles, I am thinking that some of the solo drivers especially maybe will try and do something interesting. Last lap we saw with Leon Vessels how powerful the undercut can be, but with these conditions, will it be worth it? Will it have the same effect as Henning takes the plunge and is the first within the 70-minute timer to pit in, and will do so. Now, he has a teammate, Raymond Willendorf, should get into the car as Niels Holm goes off track at the Casio Triangle. Willendorf should get in the car, as you can see in the pit lane now, as Katsi takes P4 away and Tanner P5, who will come out. Keto is also going to get by. See, the gaps are not so much. A pit stop will still set you towards the back of the grid. The only two people still behind as Willendorf gets into the car. For some reason that made me look at another car when he did the driver swap. But the only drivers now behind him are the two who have already pitted and likely need to pit again. So, they have taken it. They have gone for an even time. Just about 59 minutes for one. It will be full 60 minutes on for the other, with the pit stop minute in the middle. We shall have to see. Is Holmes still behind Tanner? I think he was for a second there. There they are. Who comes in next? Now, as I was saying, it depends on the tyres, depends on how they work. At Silverstone, we saw the undercuts be quite effective for Leon Vessels, allowing him to take P3 without even having to make an overtake on Robin Moe and Victor Borlin. But obviously it's raining, it's wet, the wet weather tyres will react differently. Now, they do wear quite a lot, but it is quite wet, so that might be keeping them nice and tidy. The rain level has not changed all that much, so the pressures should be able to be dialed in. Now, if anyone has gone on differently pressured tyres, maybe their pressures are too high or too low, with the current looks, for example Thomas Jack could try and take an early stop, maybe to see if the undercut will work, maybe also to see if he can get his pressures into a good range. If the weather continues to be as stable as it is, and he won't have to worry too much about any changes in pressures going forwards, Martin Kovac could pit early, try and cover himself off, or they could simply go long and try and take as little fuel as possible for the final laps. Maybe Thomas Jack hoping that the low fuel in the Mustang with fresh tyres that have to do fewer laps will be better for him. I think, judging by the lap times they are doing at the moment, Thomas Jack now almost 40 seconds behind Kovac in the lead. With a 2:13.3 was Thomas Jack's last lap, and a 2:11.1 was Martin Kovac's. I think Thomas Jack will go long, will make it to the 15-minute mark, and then take to the pit lane to try and do the rest of this race on new tyres and low fuel. Ralph Kettern and Katsi have both now come into the pits to take their stops of those two. Katsi is a solo driver, so he decided to divide their time evenly, despite not having a teammate they need to hand the car to, which is maybe because the tyres are wearing, maybe because they want to repair any damage. At the same time, Ralph Kettern will be replaced by Tino Gunkel, most likely, once their pit stop is done. Katsi already out of the pit lane and already around turn 1. Kettern still in the pits. We'll get moving now. And it is Tino Gunkel in the car, and they have a stop-go 30, which means they sped into the pit lane, and they will have to serve that at, well, within the next 3 laps, and that is going to harm their race significantly. Todd Curtis now into the pit lane from P3. They will likely be overtaken by a few cars here. We shall see where they come out. Thomas Jack and Martin Kovac both still going. I think both will seek to go long, which is an interesting strategy. I mean, for Kovac at least, I would have thought he might like more fuel in the car for the sake of Honda stability, but maybe the Honda really just likes these conditions. Thomas Jack again earlier saying that the wet weather running was fantastic in the Mustang for him. Will he bring it in this time around? No, he's going wide, he's missing it, and he is going to do another lap at least. Now, he crosses the line with basically 56 minutes on the clock remaining. It is a 2-minute and 13 lap time here, so he thinks in order to make it without risking the penalty that you will receive, I think it might be a stop-go if you miss the driver swap, he will have to come in, I think, in the next 2 laps. So we'll see, will he come in at the end of this lap, or will he wait another lap to do so? Now Todd Curtis comes out of the pit lane right behind Pascal Tanner, who has also already pitted. Sorry, I'm wrong on that. My thing is showing me the wrong person. It said 1.1 seconds, it is behind Tanner. He is behind Willendorf within 1 second. And Willendorf, we know, is also pitted, I believe. Yes, everyone has pitted except for the top 2. Gunkel taking his stop-go. That is his second time entering the pit lane, and hopefully has not sped into it on the way. He is going to the garage. Maybe they are also going to now retire the car, which will be a shame. That's the second time we've had someone choose to retire rather than take a penalty, especially in a long race like this. So maybe he isn't, maybe he's actually taking a stop. We shall have to see. And into the pit lane comes Martin Kovac. He comes in. Thomas Jack now taking 130R. Will he take the pits to avoid as much of an undercut as he possibly can? Or will he stay one more lap? He will have one more lap for certain. Or at least he will have one more lap to come in on. He's going, and yep, he keeps going. He will take position from Kovac temporarily. To It will be tight. Kovac was 40 seconds ahead. When will Thomas Jack... Where will Thomas Jack be when Kovac comes out of the pit lane? He'll be just on the exit of turn 1. Pascal Reuter behind Todd Curtis now. Once again, Porsches battling Porsches. Gunkel has taken... Sorry, I apologise to Gunkel. I had forgotten that it was a stop go 30. That's why he stopped in his box. I thought it was a drive-through. So I apologise for suggesting he might retire. But yes, they have served their penalty and moved back into P10 now with a 30-second gap to the car ahead, which is quite a demonstrative gap considering they just served a stop go 30, which is essentially a minute-long penalty once you take the pit lane into account. So, obviously Martin Kovac in the back there. Thomas Jack, meanwhile, there he is, into 200R, or out of 200R, coming up to Spoon. He needs to pit on this lap. It's 52 minutes, 20 remaining. The stint timer should be 70 minutes. Now, if he doesn't pit on this lap and he doesn't get disqualified, I will know that the stint timer is not working, which would also be good news for those people who pitted early. But if the stint timer is working and is set to 70 minutes, which would be the 50-minute mark remaining would be, he must come in this lap because he will not get the time needed to do another lap and come into the pit lane next time around. The question is, how fast can Thomas Jack make this stop? Certainly not going to make it 17 seconds, which is the gap as he does, yes, come in. It is the gap behind him to Martin Kovac as he enters the 50-mile-an-hour pit lane. Sorry, yeah, it's 50-mile-an-hour pit lane. I was going to say it wouldn't be 50 kilometers an hour, that would be way too slow. That is Kovac already getting past Thomas Jack in the pit lane before he even stops in his box and taking back the race lead. Pascal Reuter still now right on the tail of Todd Curtis. Not the first time we've seen these two Porsches fight. It's not the first time we've seen two Porsches fight this race. Porsche's currently sitting 3, 4, 5 and 6. We have lost one Porsche in the process, sadly, but 4 still remain. Certainly the dominant car in this series at the moment. If not on the actual scoreboard, at the very least in the race numbers. Thomas Jack exits the pit lane. 41 seconds is the gap. He has not lost too much time, but he has not gained any either. Now his job on fresh tyres is just going to have to be to go like hell and see if he can reclaim any ground to Kovac whilst Kovac is on his final stint. Pascal already looking to that inside line, maybe letting Todd Curtis know that he is there and ready to take it should anything happen to him. But the battle will continue for the next foreseeable laps. But you can see there Kovac in the background, maybe going to get involved a little bit as he tries to lap these cars ahead. The gap opening up a little bit. Todd has pulled a couple of tenths off of Reuter that lap, but a wide hairpin for both. And a Kovac seeming in the background. The theme from Jaws likely playing in his head. Certainly see what impact it will have on this potential battle. It's Thomas Jack struggling to make any headway on Kovac on fresh tyres. He just needs, I think, to take them carefully. Take it all slowly. Work into a rhythm and try not to burn them off too quickly. But Kovac certainly not seeming to have any worries at the moment. Reuter is going to let Kovac through into the Castle Triangle. That's going to lose him some time to Curtis. Where will Curtis make the move done? If it's clever, he might make it done on the straight to avoid it having to be done in any of the more difficult sections of this track. But I don't think there is enough of a gap, or I don't think the gap is close enough for Curtis to make it done. As again, Reuter moving out and then back over. We've seen so many cars do today. Not when it particularly necessarily seems necessary. And that is going to be Curtis. He's in the S's and Kovac is behind him. Kovac maybe sitting with that 40-second gap thinking, I don't need to be too hasty, don't want to cause any incidents, don't want to be on the receiving end of an incident that might allow Thomas Jack to take the win. But it's going to allow Todd Curtis to sit ahead a little bit further and for a little bit longer. And they're coming off Degner. Kovac maybe looking to make the move. I think he's going to make the dive. We'll see as they come into it. No, Kovac's still behind. Degner too, maybe. Again, Kovac behind. Todd moves across, but quite violently. And that's going to allow Reuter to once again take that second odd gap. Not much change overall, but I think certainly Todd Curtis could have played that a little bit smarter, a little bit cleverer, knowing that Reuter had already lost the time, giving way to the Honda. And the Honda now free to continue, and Reuter free to continue his attack on his fellow Porsche. This very nice base game custom livery, the green and yellowish green and black Porsche. I still can't get over the fact that every time I see this Pascal Reuter car, all I can think of is the Manthe racing car, and I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it is a custom livery. I think it does say Pure Racing on the side of it. Yes, it does. I mean, maybe it's a real team I'm just not familiar with. It reminds me of the Manthe racing car. Maybe it's based on it. I have not seen that car up close for a while, not enough to at least remember it in my head. If anyone knows, please do let me know. It might be the actual livery, and that's why it reminds me of it. .9 seconds is the gap. Is he going to look? No, he doesn't do the look to the inside this time around. Takes the regular old line. Takes a nice tighter midsection than Todd does, but I don't know whether that is better for pace in these conditions. 44 minutes to go. Again, the gap between P1 and P2 is still now 44 seconds. Thomas Jack maybe stuck a little bit behind the 74 car, currently now driven by Anders Sorensen. The other question is, the two cars who pitted early, Kalipa Steinbeck, I can't remember the second one, I feel like it was Tanner, maybe having to pit again at some point because they will not make it to the end of the race on their stint timer at the moment, because the stint time is 70 minutes and they pitted beforehand, essentially, before the 1 minute 10 mark, and thus they pitted with over 70 minutes left to go in the race. See Spray being kicked up by Todd Curtis ahead as they come down the long back stretch up to 130. A little bit on the brakes there is Pascal Reuter. A possible necessity due to the conditions. Certainly a necessity here. Doesn't clobber too much of the curb. That compromises them a little bit for the second half, whereas Todd was able to take more of that first curb and get a nice smooth line through to the second part of the corner, the second part of the chicane. Come back now, the gap still within 1 second. Big puddles on the inside there. Again, can he get a good exit? His exit seems to be lacking compared to Todd. He has gained through the whole corner, but his exit not as quick on the throttle. A little bit on the curb. Don't do that too much in these conditions. It'll be wet and slippery. The paint will be not where you want to be. Oh, is it a big slide from Pascal? Maybe on a bit of a curb, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's certainly got a good amount of speed through there. Manages to keep the car together. Carry on up to the hairpin. He takes the inside on the entry. That's going to, again, force him to get the car slowly around rather than taking the nicer entry from the outside into the apex and then back to the outside. The conditions again probably not helping. It's easy for me to come and sit here and say these things, but certainly they are fighting against both each other, their cars and the racetrack itself. The gap continuing to come back into that sub 1 second. 0.9 at the moment on my timing. 1.006 on ACC's. A little bit on the paint there. Doesn't slow him down too much. Can he get a better exit here? No, he continues to take, maybe that is just his line. Doesn't take too much of that inside curb. But it seems to have paid off for the moment. So he is 0.8 now. Certainly gained on that last lap. Lap time was 7/10 quicker overall than Todd Curtis's. Hear them just not want to be on that throttle in this section, allowing the car to naturally carry itself through for the most part. A little bit of maintenance, hugging as close as he can to that line. Back to Degner, will he take this nicer? Yes, he does. And he's certainly gaining again on Todd Curtis. But now he's within range. That dirty air is going to affect him. A bit more spray in his eyes. Again, he takes a tighter line. Maybe just not able to get the turn on the setup through the kick, forcing him to that inside line. David in chat asking where did Scott and Mo go. Daniel presumably had a spin and decided to DNF, retire the car. Robin Mo got himself a drive-through and decided to do the same before his teammate managed to get into the car, which is a shame considering both of them would have been quite assisted by the points in the championship. It's also quite a shame as Robin could have handed over to his teammates to finish the race as well, even if he would have had to do one extra stop. I guess 2 extra pit lane entries when you think about it. Ruta again backing off a bit. The 0.5 gap coming down back again to about a second. 0.982 there. And we shall see if he is able to do anything. He can get back into the range, but once he does, he drops off a bit. I don't know whether Todd perhaps picks up and decides that he can't allow himself to be under that much threat, or whether Pascal simply being affected by following the other car as close as he is in these conditions, with the spray and the worry about any sort of contact coming from what we saw earlier with a lot of ping pong between some of these Porsches. Rota still trying to get into that second again. He's succeeding ever so slightly, but I'm not sure if he's been fighting too much and maybe burned off his tyres. You can see, I think that's Gunkel there in the foreground, coming up to be lapped after their stop go 30 seconds. They are now a full minute behind Steinbeck in P9. The gaps are incredibly petered out now. I also believe that the cars up to car 323 have now all been lapped, which essentially means every car behind P3 has been lapped, as the 232 car is now sitting behind Martin Kovac on the grid. Certainly yet another dominant performance from the Hungarian driver, which unfortunately, despite his hopefulness about the Mustang's ability in these conditions which I might remind you all have been relatively stable throughout this session. Certainly it is still raining, but the rain has not changed in pace for the past hour and a half. But I do not believe Thomas Jek has had the success that he had hoped in these conditions compared to Kovac. But it is, again, useful to remember he is still well ahead of his immediate competition. He was well ahead of Robin Moe by the time Robin Moe chose to retire the car, despite having to fight them early on. He had managed to get that gap up to some 10 odd seconds, maybe even more, by the time that Robin Moe had actually gotten his drive-through for track limits. A drive-through which then led to the retirement of the number 3 car. Turn the autocam on, see what happens actually. I haven't really used it that often. it's going to show me Pascal Tanner, who is currently leading the focus chart on the autocam. The autocam on ACC Race Control has some odd ways of divvying up screen time and providing a rating. This is curious. I'm not sure why it's chosen to show Tanner. I think maybe because you thought it was down on screen time, maybe? No. I'm not sure what the selection reason is. It's giving him a rating of 1.87, whatever that means. It's giving Pascal Reuter, weirdly, a rating of less. I think maybe because we've been watching his battle for so long. Maybe it thinks that someone else needs a share of it. But I mean, let's have a look. Sitting P3, Pascal Tanner, Glorious Racing. Certainly a... certainly had a good race thus far. One which has not been marred by the same difficulties that have affected some of their early opponents who have since retired from the race. Glorious Racing, one of the several Glorious Racing cars entered into this championship, although I think only 2 have made it to Suzuka today, but hopefully some will be back next time out at what will hopefully be a dry Bathurst with some interesting time dilation settings, as is my understanding. And we now switch to Yaroslav Katsi, another driver we haven't seen as much of at times. And you can see Thomas Jack drifting his way through 200R whilst Katsi goes off on the initial portion of Spoon Curve. That allows Thomas Jack to quite neatly slot his way through to well, sorry, not to P2. I was going to say to P2. No, that's completely wrong. Just slots his way through to lap Katsi and continue to get ahead into clean air again. Between himself, though, and Martin Kovac now, between Thomas Jack and Martin Kovac is not only a 50-second gap, but also 4 other cars, which have been lapped, which is basically every car between himself and Kovac except for Tanner. It's Willendorf, Curtis, Reuter, and then obviously Katsi, who is just passed. Ah, okay, there must be another car. I think the 70 car is also in there who has been lapped twice. That is Gunkel due to their pit stop, which resulted, their stop go 30 pit stop, which obviously lost them another minute or so, essentially, after their speeding in the pit lane to their initial stop. Certainly one of the harsher penalties in sim racing. Sometimes there's an argument that it perhaps shouldn't necessarily be a thing or be able to be as harsh. Obviously we have, as far as I'm aware, no control over it. Naturally you shouldn't speed into the pit lane, but the reason for that in reality is safety, whereas in the sim obviously safety is not actually a concern. Arguably all pit stops could be in sim racing flat out, as they used to be in the 60s in real life. I don't know, maybe there is an argument. I don't think we can do it in ACC, but maybe there is an argument that there should be some sort of penalty, but the stop go 30 is incredibly harsh, and again it makes sense in reality where people, you get a stop go 30 in ACC because you sped too much. If you speed a little bit, you'll get a drive through, but if you sped too much, essentially, it's a matter of increasing danger. The more speed you take into an active pit lane where people will be operating openly, the more you have to be careful, the more risk there is to those people if you take undue speed into the pit lane. But obviously in a sim, again, no one's actually operating in that pit lane, and whilst maybe for realism's sake, I'm going to turn this off now this sort of come because it's starting to get a bit weird. There's also a little battle developing between Steinbeck and Sorensen. But maybe in sim racing there is an argument for why a stop go 30 is a bit too harsh. I understand wanting a pit speed limit because it is realistic, and part of this is trying to simulate real racing close to what real racing is. But at the same time, you know, and at the same time you have to then give a penalty if someone speeds into pit lane, because that is an undue advantage to that person, to that individual. But maybe it is the case that a stop go 30 is quite harsh for a sim race, considering the reason in reality a stop go 30 would be given is because because of the safety factor, because it's a greater risk to the staff working in the lane. Maybe it should only ever be a drive-through, or perhaps even just a time penalty for speeding in the pit lanes, because realistically, if you're speeding in the first half of the pit lane, as Steinbeck looking to try and make a move into the S's, but I don't think one will be coming of it. Not in this section, at least not until Dunlop at the earliest. But I don't know, maybe it should be, maybe pit penalties should be re-evaluated for sim racing in general, because the risk factor isn't there. Oh, there's almost an attempt there. I don't know, that's my take of the day, that's my little thought of the day, why not? Because it is very harsh on Gunkel that he lost, you know, he lost a minute essentially, because he went slightly too fast to pit lane. And fair enough, there needs to be a penalty for it, because the pit lane, if you can speed in the pit lane without penalty, then everyone will do it, and those who try to play by the rules will, you know, be disadvantaged by it. But a stop go 30 is much harsher than any time they would ever have gained, and the reason for that is safety. Maybe realistically a drive-through would be the harshest penalty that should be given in sim racing for such a thing. But again, I don't think that's possible in ACC, and to be fair, the solution is always simple: just don't speed in the pit lane. Which certainly some cars today, or at least one car today, has not managed. But Steinbeck didn't speed in pit lane, but I think still has to take one more pit stop, so maybe a chance to do so as the sim starts to get quite dark as we head into the 6:40 PM area. Surprisingly dark for this time of year, but obviously the cloud cover and the rain is not going to help. The car's lights have been on since the start, they are more prominent now as the sun perhaps doesn't start to set at this time of year, but certainly is trying to get through more layers of cloud as it was previously. Little flash from Steinbeck down the straight, maybe trying to get past. As Sorensen I don't think was intending to let him pass, but goes a bit wide on the exit there, or in the middle of the first corner. Taking some very different lines through here. Both of them gets very close to the rear end of the Ferrari to Steinbeck. Now I'm wondering, for Sorensen's sake, if he's defending this, I think Steinbeck has to pit again. So I mean, I'm not certain on that. Again, if the pit timer, the stint timer is not playing fully, maybe he has somehow got away with it, but I think he should have to. Certainly if Sorensen has a stint timer, then he should know that Steinbeck has a stint timer. And so by fighting Steinbeck, you might be losing more time than you would eventually gain by letting him go and then passing him when naturally he has to pit again. Now into the hairpin, Steinbeck is being fought by Sorensen. A good fight going on there. Sorensen continues to make his way ahead. And that is a quick swap of position, followed by a quick secondary stop of position. Now there is a little fight going on ahead, but it is further in gap, so I'm going to keep on this one. But Willendorf, Curtis and Reuter are now all in a battle for P4, which is within about a second and a half of each other overall. Let's see where they are on the track. It looks like they're in the S's now. Steinbeck through up to 130R they will go. Steinbeck following closely. up to the triangle. Will there be a dive made? We've seen him make a lunge before that was not necessarily intentional. Or as he clatters that curb, but so does the Ferrari. See the rattling of the bonnet, which has been affected by the crash they had earlier on after turn 1. Being pelted by rain is the Aston Martin. That is going to not be done yet, but again we've seen them take different lines for this next section. Oh, braking in the mid corner. He's going to have a look up the inside. He thinks better of it. Almost little tap on the rear. That was a very, very close to being a collision, but Steinbeck playing very nicely, taking things easy. They come up into Dunlop. Degner 1 next on the list. Not enough in it, as that is Sorensen out wide. He gets into the gravel. He's defending very hard, perhaps too hard, and that allows Steinbeck up to P8. But for how long? And meanwhile, the 70 car, Tino Gunkel, going very slowly. I think just at a moment there. Let's have a quick look. Out of 130R, they get on the white stuff with the red and white curbing. They hit the wall, hit the tyre barrier, and that is going to put them down a little bit. Now, meanwhile, something has just happened here. I don't think we'll get to see it, but that is Todd Curtis. I think he just got passed by Pascal Reuter. Let's have a quick look. And he did. You see him get into the gravel of his own cord, and that allows Pascal Reuter to take P5 from Todd Curtis. That is the outcome thus far of that battle, which does involve Willendorf, but Willendorf has been saved a little bit. I once again thank Porsche for giving me some battling to watch, and thanks Steinbeck and Sorensen for giving me some battling to watch in the latter portions of this race. Pascal in the middle. 1 point, well, now it's closing. I'm going to wait till they get out of this so I can actually see what the gap is. Roughly 0.8 seconds between himself and Willendorf, and 0.8 seconds between himself and Todd Curtis. Make that 0.7 to Willendorf now. Can Reuter once again make a move and take P4 for himself? Now, Todd Curtis is chasing him down. Reuter's going to have to make a decision whether he wants to continue to take the fight to the car ahead, which he has dropped off of in these last few corners, or he's going to focus on defending from the car behind. I think we've seen before that he will try and do both at the same time and probably will be successful in it. And that's a wide entry there from Todd Curtis, a bit deep into first corner. Pascal getting the edge on the car ahead into the S's section of Suzuka circuit. 20 minutes to go, under at least. Thomas Jack now 54 seconds behind Kovac, and that, I think, even if Kovac has a large spin, maybe enough to save him and save his P1 finish. Pascal Tanner, meanwhile, P3 at the moment. So it's getting very, very dark now on the circuit. as it comes up. Pascal Reuter has a drive-through. When did that happen? I don't know, but that must be a track limits drive-through. I only just noticed that it was not there a couple of seconds ago. And that is going to be a very big shame for the 84 car. And that will put them, that should likely only drop them one place, but that's certainly going to affect, with only 20 minutes remaining, their attempts to take Willendorf and take P4 in this race. They should only lose the place to Todd Curtis. Behind Todd Curtis is 37.2 seconds to Katsi in the BMW. Pascal should certainly be safe from that. Will they take it? Yes, they do. They're coming in the shallow line, and you know from the shallow line they're coming in to take a drive through. Pascal, Todd Curtis then free, perhaps, if they can get to it, to attack Willendorf themselves, and maybe take a shot at P4. Again, quite wide into turn 1. Maybe that's just the weather, maybe it's just something there. But they get it turned in. 1.6 seconds is the gap, make that 1.5 now. As Pascal Tanner gets passed by Thomas Jack into before turn 1, having just come out of the pit lane. They're now side by side with Gunkel just ahead of them. Let's have a quick look. There we are. You can see Pascal Reuter then down to P6. Only one place lost, but 26 seconds now is what they have actually lost to Todd Curtis ahead. And that is going to set them back for the rest of this race, unless Curtis and or Willendorf have some sort of incident that bring them back into play within the next quarter of an hour, roughly. .9 seconds, and now is the gap between Curtis and Willendorf. It's certainly looking to be spicing up now. Willendorf not quite able, as Reuter takes... Well, it says Reuter swap place with Katsi, but I think that's just a glitch of the timing tower, because I don't think he ever got passed by Katsi, but Curtis on that last lap almost over a second faster than Willendorf. Willendorf perhaps just having a bad lap, but it was a 14.252 versus 15.327. That certainly, if that continues at that rate, well, Todd will have to make the move done, but you'd have to expect that Willendorf has more in him. Let's have a look at their current laps. They're both down on their deltas, but their deltas are from their best laps, which are both 2:12s. Oh, sorry, one was Willendorf was a high 2:12.9, and Curtis was a 2:13.0. So not much in between the two of them in terms of best pace. But in these conditions, these variable laps that will be done, Curtis has dropped back a bit through the previous section. 0.7 now is the gap. They come through triangle. Curtis again takes a wider line than his opponent into the first portion. But 0.5 seconds, 0.6 even is the gap. What will the laps have been? That's what I am curious to see. That's a 15.2 from Curtis versus a 15.6 from Willendorf. Curtis certainly looking to have the edge at the moment. Now again, loses a bit of time in that first corner. Gains it back a little bit on the exit. Maybe they're compromising the line into it to gain a bit of a better exit. The angle certainly doesn't help with what it appears to look like. See how dark it's getting as well. You're not expecting to get this dark. I know it's raining, but it's, you know, almost 7 o'clock only in the middle of summer. I believe these are set to be middle of summer still on the server, but it is getting incredibly dark. See the wonderful headlight patterns of the Porsches. I quite like Pascal Reuter, who has the, we quickly have a look at him. We've got the pink inside LEDs. There's always a fun little thing you can do with the Porsches is have those LEDs in the headlights. But sadly Todd and Willendorf have neither got them. Once again out of spoon. We have done 49 laps. Kovac has done. I was expecting it to be, I did say 45, and I said it probably more, and it certainly will be. We've probably got a good couple more in us. It's 11:26 on the clock to roughly 2 minutes 10 a lap for the leader. 2:11 was Kovac's last lap. Or 2:11.755, which is still a whole second faster than Thomas Jacks. I think we've definitely got 4 or 5 more laps in us, maybe 6 at a push. Maybe that might be pushing it a bit too far. Depends. Kovac currently sitting at Degner 2. After finishing this lap, he's probably got 5 in him, depending on the timing of that last lap. Gap is the closest it has been, 0.2 seconds. Todd just has to stick with the rear through this section. He drops off a little bit. He needs to be very good on the throttle. Dunlop needs to just stay with him, and maybe he can make a move into Degner. If not, he needs to try and stay behind there and get him in the hairpin. That's what makes this track so difficult. Degner is not a place that's easy to make a move, but it is a place that is quite hard to follow closely. As one mistake would lead you both into the gravel, and yeah, into the hairpin. He's already dropped to 6.6 seconds behind. Can he get a good exit out of the hairpin? He's certainly going to try. I think he gets a better exit than his opponent there. From the bonnet of the Porsche. That, there was a moment where it's trying to tell me there's been a place change. I don't think there has been. Down the order. Gatsy still P7, Steinbeck still P8, Sorensen still P9, so I don't know what it was telling me that for. Now, we're also coming to the point where in the next few minutes we may have to see some cars pit if they have not pitted. The 2 cars that did not pit correctly with their stint timers. We've seen Reuter pit twice, we've seen Gunkel pit twice. can't remember either of them. I think Simon was one who pitted earlier. I can't remember who the last one was. I feel like it was Tanner, but it might have been Reuter. It was Reuter. He's fine now because he had to pit again. If it wasn't Gunkel who had that stop go, that would have counted a second pit stop. Reuter had the stop go, so that would have counted, and Todd Curtis gets into a puddle, and that is going to end this attack for the time being. That is an unlucky situation, and that puts the gap down to 3.3 seconds now. Slightly growing as he tries to reclaim the car, reclaim the tyres after that half spin. Thankfully keeps it out of the wall and keeps it on track. And that is Pascal Reuter in the pit lane. Was that for a second stop? He seems to have just come out. Let me double check. Did he go in there? Splash and dash, quick. I think he just took to the pit lane, hoping maybe that'll reset his, I'm not sure what that was for. Maybe he got a drive-through and I didn't notice, and it was very, very tight. But that has dropped him back to P8, and now Steinbeck and Katze through to P6, P7. Well, not P6, P7 respectively, P7, P6 respectively. P7 for Steinbeck, P6 for Jaroslav Katze. I don't know why it's reset itself to the basic map. There we go, broadcast is back. I must have actually pressed that. And that's Todd Curtis. Todd Curtis back again. Already 2.3 seconds is the gap again. I think he has the pace to gain. He certainly seems to have the pace advantage in clean air on Willendorf at the moment. But once he gets to the rear of him, he can't just seemingly in these conditions make the move stick, which is a shame because we know he can make good moves. We know that from last time out of Suzuka. As we saw a number of the Porsches here today, and those who aren't also make very nice moves around the famous track in the county of I think it's Northamptonshire, and I can't remember what the other track it is. Other county it is. Berkshire? No, of course not. I cannot remember what the other county is for Silverstone, but oh well. Northamptonshire is the only one I need to know. This is where someone's going to come in and tell me actually it's not Northamptonshire either, but I feel like it is. My apologies, they had a my notification noise, annoyingly. Todd Curtis then, back within 0.5. I mean, he has certainly the pace to do it, and he's got under 5 minutes, or just around, that he's looking at Kovac on the map. He's got just over 5 minutes, maybe just about 6 minutes to do it, as we will reach the checkered flag, and we should have another minute and a bit on the clock for Kovac, as he has just come through the S's now. I think he should be able to make that one more lap, basically, or just under a half a lap more than we are currently going to go. It's getting very dark, and still, and with yet, Todd Curtis needs now to take this position at long last and reap the benefits of all that he has been fighting for essentially the last 2 hours against his fellow Porsches. Pascal Tanner still P3, gap 1:23 minutes to Thomas Jack. Thomas Jack P2 gap 1 minute 1 second to Martin Kovac. Kovac has done an absolutely brilliant job here today. Another dominant performance from the Hungarian driver, as I've said before, and well, I mean, barring any major incidents in the next few minutes, he will once again claim the top step of the podium in the RP Summer Cup. But Thomas Jack still very, very close behind. And just to double check, once it wants to load, as we see there is a yellow flag on track. I'm not sure who that was for. I think someone must have dipped a toe. Martin Steinbeck takes the pit lane. I knew he would have to. He must have had the need. Steinbeck is going to take the pit lane and perform a quick mandatory stint stop. Or he might just drive through. I'm not sure if he actually can do that, but that is going to allow Pascal Reuter back through into P7 after his issues and his drive-through a couple of moments ago. Oh, it's a little bit squirrely there as Todd Curtis on in swoon. Once again, we've seen so many others have a few little wiggles. 0.9 seconds, see the gap again, it has come down. Willendorf has not had the pace against Todd in the clean air, but in front of him, he seems just to be able to keep Todd behind without anything too aggressive or anything too dangerous. He has just been able to keep Todd Curtis behind and continue to sit quite comfortably in P4. Right, the gap between P1 and P2 in the points tally, as I was checking, P1, because we allow for quite a few drivers, we allow for 40 cars. All 40 cars get points if they enter the race and finish. Part of the casual side of it, there isn't too much in terms of gap. Now there is some increasing exponential gaps towards the top of the grid, although not really too many. I mean, by the time it kind of peters out around P15 odd. But the gap, the leader gets 105 points, the race winner, sorry, gets 105 points. As I'm sorry to say, I missed that entirely. Todd Curtis gets past Pascal Tanner. I'm going to have to go back and have a look, because I was still really reading the stories. If you saw it on screen, well, let's have another little look at it. I think that is going to be, yep, that is a dive and a half and a shove to make it true. That is Todd Curtis ahead, but that may be deemed contact racing by Willendorf. But then again, Todd had to make it done. And if that goes to the stewards, well, I will be curious to see what they will say. But for now, that is Todd Curtis through into P3. Apologies, I had to pause to sneeze. But Todd goes, yes, into P4, sorry, and Willendorf now to P5, and I would expect Todd Curtis for next. Well, we'll have one more lap after this one, as the timer is at 20 seconds. Kovac is in the S's, and so Kovac will take the checker flag this lap around. It will have been 55 laps of Suzuka, 2 hours. And Todd Curtis will likely finish P4. Although Willendorf's not quite getting away from him, sorry, not quite letting him get away. But again, Curtis in clean air has had the advantage. And again, I will see if the stewards decide to take any action if that gets reported. If you are watching this and you had an incident during the race, which this sounds like an injury lawyer's ad of some kind. But if you have had an accident at work lately, or at the racetrack to be specific, this race, and you want the stewards to have a look at it, you must put in a ticket. This is not like live stewarding, whilst I do have race control here. Once I close race control after this race, it will be gone forever. And I do have a contact with this, but for post-race stewarding, if you want to have a contact looked at, you must put in a ticket, as that contact list will obviously be gone once race control is closed, which at some point I will have to do. We do not, therefore, do live stewarding in these races, and basically, yeah, put a ticket in if you have an incident. And if Willendorf does put a ticket in for that, I will be interested to see what the stewards say about that one. It will depend, I guess, upon whether they feel it was an overly aggressive dive bomb, or whether they feel that Curtis was entitled to the move. Will happen quite quickly. So it'll be interesting to see exactly at what points turn-ins happen and whatever else may intervene. But Todd Curtis certainly does not seem to think that he needs to give it back, as he has taken it quite comfortably. And that's Steinbeck. Something happened to Steinbeck there. And Kovac, as I was speaking, has taken the checkered flag and taken the race win. Reuter has also finished, as have now Sorensen, and then Steinbeck will finish. He'll be the fourth to finish, but will finish in P9, as Thomas Jack only around Spoon. That shows you how much the gap is, or the gap has been, between P1 and P2. Pascal Tanner then has also finished the race, having also been lapped by Kovac before the end of the race. Thomas Jack, meanwhile, has lapped, I think, everyone except... Thomas Jack has lapped... Yes, Thomas Jack has lapped everyone except for Tanner, I want to say, because Todd Curtis and Windorf are ahead, will finish... No, he's lapped everyone up to P5. Kovac has officially lapped everyone except for Thomas Jack. And Thomas Jack comes to take the checkered flag. It comes quite late here. And there he goes. Meanwhile, Yaroslav Katsi and Tino Gunkel yet to finish. Both on the same portion of track, both a lap apart. Both will comfortably finish where they are now because no one else can overtake them, as everyone else is checkered. And as we watch Katsi come across the line, I will say my apologies, but there will be no post-race interviews today. This has been 2 hours. My voice is starting to get a bit gone. Hopefully, next time out, 6 minutes will be a bit nicer. I want to get on with a few things, but I will say to all of our competitors a big congratulations. We officially had 50, I think that's 14th. I think Bretterbrüder had a problem at some point with their connection in the practice. So 14 overall entries, 10 finishers. And I'd like to say congratulations to all those who finished the race. Kovac was your race winner, followed by Thomas Jack, Pascal Tanner, Todd Curtis, Willendorf, Katsi, Reuter, Sorensen, Steinbeck, Gunkel. Rounding out the top 10 and rounding out all your actual qualified, classified finishers. Daniel Scott then finished 36 laps down after his DNF, after his spin. Justin Gottlieb, who said in chat that he simply couldn't get a rhythm and got a bit frustrated with the car, but is looking forward to racing the mountain in 2 weeks' time at Bathurst. Finished P12 with 41 laps down. Robin Moe, after getting a drive-through, decided to retire the car 42 laps. And Wenning must have had an instant, I guess, on the opening laps that just couldn't come back from, and retired the car. And P14 for 52 laps off of the 55 lap finish. Alright. Get ready, as I said, apologies, but no post-race interviews today. But I will simply say again, congratulations to all of our competitors who took part in this race. 2 hours in these conditions is not easy, but they have all managed to get through it. congratulations to Martin Kovac, who will take the race win. The second season will be on 210 points in the championship, and to Thomas Jack, who will take his second P2 and should be on, I think, 100 and I want to say 98 points or 88 points. No, 98 points. Yes. So gap within 12 points, which certainly is something that could come to find itself at Bathurst. And hopefully we'll see Robin Moe back there, who is a very, very quick driver on that particular track. But until next time, I will say thank you all for watching. And I'm going to simply quickly, as we see the session tick over to a very bright, that truly shows you how dark things had gotten and how bright it then resets to. But I will say again, quick thank you, shout out to our patrons. Unfortunately, I think this still needs to be updated, but we do have another partner in David, also known as Cookie, who was in the chat, so thank you to him. Thank you to Jacob, Deep Cuts, Robin Merling, myself apparently, Suicide Cookie, M1LDT, Alexander Georgiev, I'm Jagot, that's Justin Gottlieb, and Pierre Moreno for helping to support us to run our servers, and thank you to David as well for doing so. You will definitely be added to the list before the next race. Until then, that is the wrong thing. For some reason, OBS decided to be very silly. But, again, as I did last time, here is our calendar. We have just completed round 2 at Suzuka, 120 minutes thereof. Next race, again, starting the same time, is Bathurst in 2 weeks' time, the 18th of August. And that will be a 96-minute race, I believe, with some interesting time dilation. It will also be streamed again by myself here on Racing Power's YouTube channel. Probably again starting about 6:30 as they come to the end of the practice. And then in 4 weeks' time now, on the 1st of September, to finish off the summer properly on the first day of, I guess, what could be considered autumn. Well, is autumn really? September, I think, is firmly an autumn month. Is the 2.4 hours of the Nordschleife, which will be quite a race, I hope, to watch. And again, if you are watching and you haven't yet signed up, the sign-ups will be open again this week and next. They will close a day before the race, or the day before the race. And you may sign up. You can sign up as a team, as a duo, or as a solo, and you can change your team members around if you're not able to make it, or you want to have, or one teammate isn't able to make it. You can switch to another teammate for the 2.4 hours if you don't want to take that solo. And I hope to see you all again out on track at Bathurst, where hopefully we'll have some more cars going around on a hopefully drier track this time around, with some interesting time dilation involved. But until then, I have been your commentator, James Andrews, and have a great evening or afternoon or morning wherever you are, and good night.